going to simplify these radicals, the square roots, and notice they all have negatives under them. So we're going to go back to the idea of square root of -1 is going to be defined as I. So when I break this up, and you don't have to do this every single time, but I just want to show you where that number is coming from. This is -1 times 100 is -100. This is the same as the square root of -1 times the square root of 100. I can go ahead and break it up because it's all multiplication. If it's been addition in there, I can't do it. But if it's multiplication, I can go ahead and break the radical up. The square root of -1 is I times, and then the square root of 100 is 10. So this would be the same as 10 times I, 10I, or I10. For part B, the same idea, the square root of -1 times 300. All right, well, I know what the square root of -1 is, but the square root of 300, I don't know exactly. If I type it into my calculator, I'm going to get a big long decimal, and I don't want a big long decimal. So I'm just going to call it for right now I times 300. I'm going to come off to the side here and think about how I can break up 300. So that's 3 times 100, and 100 is 10 times 10. So anytime I can find a pair of numbers, that pair is going to come out from under the radical. And then the 3 is left under. So the square root of 300 is really the same as 10 times radical 3. I could rewrite this as, a couple different ways. I could put the 10 in front of the I, 10 times I radical 3. Or you could put the I at the very end. Just make sure that you don't put it under the radical symbol. All three of those mean the same thing. All right, so let's come up here to the letter C. Square root of -25. The square root of -1 times 25. So I can break that up. And if you know what the square root of that number is, you can go ahead and take it out from under the radical. So this is I. Square root of 25 is 5 times 5. So it's just 5 coming out from under the radical, or we could call it 5I. Square root of -8. -1 times 8. I know what the square root of -1 is. The square root of 8, though, I don't know what that is. So I'm going to break it down. Call that I square root of 8 for right now. Take the number 8 and make yourself a little factor tree. 4 times 2. 4 breaks down into 2 times 2. I have a pair of 2's that will come out from under the radical. And then the leftover number is the number that's left under the radical symbol. That's the one that goes here. So my final answer is I2 radical 2, or 2I square root of 2, or 2 radical 2, and then put the I at the very end.